subconscious, right, Brother Muhammad?
Right.
It ain't going nowhere.
Right.
Your subconscious feeds your conscious. And when people talk about so-and-so, they're so mean, they're so nasty, they need to heal something. Don't take it personal. That is their stuff. So I'm asking you to tune in to yourself. What do you need? There's something that you need. We are a wounded people. We need to own that. We're wounded. There's things about us that we don't want to talk about, and our ancestors didn't want to talk about it, but we persevered. But again, we continue to be bombarded with that trauma again. That's why it's hard for us to stay in our prosperity. It's hard for us to move forward because we haven't dealt with those original traumas, and we're continuing to be traumatized. So I'm going to ask you to join me for a couple minutes in a meditation. Anybody uncomfortable with that? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. I'm going to ask you, yes sir, I see this brother over here breathing already. That's exactly what you do. I'm going to ask you to tune in to your higher self. Your higher self. Because we all got a higher self and a lower self. And we know when we're our lower self, we're acting out and being whatever. So focus on your breath and be open. Connect yourself with the Creator. Because it's waiting for you to be open. Again, regardless of what I say, focus on your breath. We are free. On this day, we are free. We breathe in freedom and release anything that enslaves us or causes us to feel enslaved. There's one breath, one power, and that power is the Creator. Whether you call it God, Allah, Christ consciousness, the Buddha. We are at one with that power, that infinite spirit that moves in, around, and through us. We speak this word knowing that we have been granted a perfect freedom, a state of consciousness that says our lives are our own. We know it, we believe it, and we shall own it. We take dominion over our lives. We are no longer a slave to anything that seeks to control our minds, our bodies, and our spirit. We are in control of our lives. We are in control of our finances. Yes. We are in control of our feelings. Black people are emotional beings. But we can establish control. This is how we have continued to fall short. On this day, we are free from discord of every nature. We give thanks for the knowing that we are free to live our lives as we choose. We give thanks for the knowing that no thing, no person, no condition imprisons us. Today, we are free. We release this word to law and know it is done, and so it is. Again, focus on your breath. Take 3 deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. And when you are done, allow your eyes to be open. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very passionate about spiritual life. I'm going to ask you while you're out in the community to power up in the way that you do in your practices, whatever that may be. I'm going to ask you to tune into yourself and your own healing because it's necessary. You need to have strength in all of these fights. All these people that come to this podium are passionate. You hear it, you feel it from them. But you gotta have power because people out there are trying to control us, and they have. So one more last thing, I want you to take a message from my jar, my therapeutic circles. I call this my wisdom jar. And anyone who takes one, it applies to the picker, and feel free to take one of my business cards as well. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Our last speaker of the evening is a father figure to me. Honestly, he's a father figure to me. He has taken me under his wing the past 2 years and has mentored me, has taken me across this country, has introduced me to some of the most beautiful and crazy people I've ever met in my life. Literally crazy. But without any further ado, we're going to bring up Reverend Jerome McCory. He's going to speak on bringing faith to the fight.
I'm going to talk loud and fast in the interest of time. I am unapologetically black. I am unapologetically a gospel preacher. I do not hide who I am. I'm on the other side of a lot of what you heard here tonight. I'm a no-nonsense gospel preacher. It's the only way I know how to bring faith to the fight, real quick. Years ago, I thought I could be the popo. That was back in the days. Some of you remember the name, some of you older folk like me will remember Leon Frazier, Quinn Capers, Paul Shepard, the Sampson brothers. There were a bunch of us who thought we could change the world. These were black cops who worked black events and didn't charge a dime as extra duty jobs. These were black cops that kept up with the community. Now just real quick so you understand a part again of that background. In 2008, I founded an organization here in Dayton called the Adam Project, working primarily with African-American men, black men coming home from prison. We had a 70% hiring ratio of black men. I'm a strong believer, and it doesn't matter who knows it and who don't know it. The government cannot bring in enough programs to put folks in reentry back to work. I don't want to go to the same government that once imprisoned me to say, will you help me get a job? And neither do most of them want to, but we put them in a position where they have no choice because faith ain't been in the fight. A couple of years ago, when I knew that I was going on the road with Cornel West and some other folks, when we were preparing for Rise Up October with Quentin Tarantino, who got in trouble with FOP in New York and nationally, simply because he made a statement that Black Lives Matter and worked with us. Gina Belafonte, daughter of Henry Belafonte. But when I knew that I was leaving Dayton, I said, I know they're going to give whoever take my place the blues. So I split the organization in two. Persevera took over the Adam Project, the reentry component. I got a hold of a brother I had mentored, and you have to understand, I've been in this community a long time. Sister Zakia got her start as a board member with the Adam Project. I tapped Anthony Roebuck and said, I want you to take Stop Mass Incarceration Miami Valley to a whole different level. Persevera, Javon Webster, these are brothers, these are folk, these are sisters that I work with because I believe you got to have some faith in the fight. Now, when I talk about faith, and my role now as National Representative for the Faith and Social Justice Alliance, I'm not talking about Christianity. I ain't talking about Islam. I'm not talking about Buddhists or Hinduism. I'm talking about faith in whatever you believe in. Sometimes I'm talking about an imani faith. A faith in the person who's next to you. Now real quick, let me tell you what I mean when you talk about bringing faith. You got to have enough faith to recognize the wicked and then not be afraid to call the wicked wicked to the wicked's face. That's what faith will do. I work with a group of mothers. Yes, I'm on the other end of things now because I see those mothers' tears. I stood on a bloody street in Ferguson, Missouri, where Mike Brown had just been literally murdered by the police. Stood with his mother, with his father. That hurts, y'all. I stood with Samaria Rice in Cleveland. I stood with Latoya Howe, mother of Justice Howe, whose 17-year-old son was shot and killed in the dark. Let me tell you what faith ought to be doing. Faith is responsible for stirring up folk and saying, just as Moses said, it's time to let God's people go. The problem is we ain't got enough faith involved in movement. Now here's the issue, because some of us are responsible for this. You cannot say on one hand, we need the black church. And then when the black preacher show up, we just dog him or her. You can't say we need faith in the fight and scared to come to a community meeting because it's in a holy place. You cannot have it both ways. But I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate because I stand in churches. I stand in the mosque, the synagogue, yes, and the temple. I done been in everybody's faith house. Because there are some of us who are honest, and I have pastors who tell me to my face, Rev, I love what you do. Doc, I love what you do. I just don't know what to do. Quite frankly, I'm concerned because the white church has been more receptive and more active in allowing us to hold meetings to encourage their congregation than many black churches. The Unitarian Church in most cities, especially in Ohio, when I travel across Ohio, have on their marquee, Black Lives Matter. Black churches ain't even doing it because we're afraid to go against the status quo. Here's why, passionately, I believe you got to have faith in the fight to ensure, and I'm a black preacher. I told y'all I don't apologize. But I'm so tired of chicken-eating Negro preachers, I don't know what to do with myself. Right. Because all most of them want to do is be political. Want to get invited to the mayor's prayer breakfast so they don't want to step on nobody's toes. Do you know who ought to be speaking out on police killings? Not just a black preacher. In New York, and my wife gets on me sometime. In New York, in front of about 20,000 people, and I may have answered wrong. Somebody asked me the question, and sometimes I tell folks, don't ask me stuff in the heat of the moment because my truth will come out. They said, is it any good policeman that you know of? And I was doing an interview for the New York newspaper, Newsday, whatever they call it. And I had to think for a minute. Here was my response. If we had so many good cops, it would make it uncomfortable for bad cops. I said this in response to an article I read online, because even when I'm not here and I'm traveling, I read what's going on in Dayton through that little Dayton Daily News app on my phone. And I was so brokenhearted to find out a reporter here had done a story on homicides, and the folk they interviewed were blaming the black community for the conditions in the black community. What in the world is wrong with us? Faith must speak truth to power. We didn't create this community with food deserts. We didn't create a system of education that would give us a second-rate education. We didn't create a system that would make it okay for the police to kill us at the drop of a pen. And here's the difference, here's the real problem. I know that if I have to lay my life down and one of these brothers do it, there's going to be an immediate trial. We've yet to convict police officers. I go back to Kylan English. I'm sorry, you'll never get me to believe in a million years that Kylan English broke out of a police car, walked up on the bridge, jumped to his death. And the truth of the matter is, while the investigation was going on, there were folk, when the Justice Department came to Dayton, Ohio, they said, we can't find the alleged two witnesses because the police said they can't find them. An attorney who's now dead, a civil rights attorney named Green, some of y'all remember Brother Green, called me on the telephone and said they talking about they can't find the witnesses. He and I got in a car and found them in less than 45 minutes. We're hiding and we're covering. Faith will tell us that discernment is essential. I don't care what you call yourself. Brother Steve, as a good Muslim, I know that you can tell when somebody don't mean you good. I know when I'm in trouble. I got that much sense. See, I spent years as a bodyguard. Some folk don't know that part of my life. I went to work for this guy named Don King, and he assigned me to this young brother he had just signed by the name of Mike Tyson. And one of the things I learned to do real quick was to tell who meant harm and who didn't mean harm. That's spiritual discernment. Police officers have to learn some spiritual discernment. When you sit next to a guy 8 hours a day, when you go to your roll calls and you're sitting in the room with that bad apple, you know who they are. The other problem I had with that news article was it accused young black people in the black community of having a no snitch policy. I called the reporter. I said, where do you think we learned the no snitch policy? It's called the thin blue line. They don't tell on each other. I've yet to see a police officer who was on the scene of a bad shooting testify against another police officer. And they tell us don't snitch. Tell us to snitch. But they won't tell on each other. The heroin epidemic, good example. The preacher got to stop being so scared to say into the pulpit and say how many folk we got in jail because they had a couple joints, doing less harm to themselves and others than folk on heroin. Don't misunderstand me. Let's go after heroin. Let's look for alternatives. But why are you waiting until it affected more white folk than black folk? You didn't have set up such a system for folk on crack cocaine. And so on the one hand, I feel for the police because they're charged with the protection of a system that is literally out of control. They are the gatekeepers who are told in one community, Beaver Creek, in one community, Oakwood, in one community, Upscale Kettering, in one community, you get paid to protect the man. But in West Dayton, in black communities, you get paid to protect the land because they tell you most black folk don't own the property, no way, they rent. We have to be honest, and we must stand together. So faith and bringing faith to the fight at the national level is a tedious responsibility. Oh, Sister Brinson is so right. Every now and then, you know what, I got to sit down and take deep breaths, meditate, because I see the tears of Samaria Rice every time I come in contact with her. They tried to blame her for the death of Tamir. Why was he in the park playing by himself in the first place? Why not? I don't care what folk are doing. We were talking about the Second Amendment. It takes the black church to do something. Let me tell you something. We fight to make sure that so-called ex-felons can register and vote in the state of Ohio. But when are they going to give them their Second Amendment right back? We only fight to give them part of their right. You went to jail because you had some reefer, and now your Second Amendment right is gone while we fight to keep your right to vote. You ought to have all of your rights when you come home and prove yourself. But we can't because it's been an us against them mentality. Chief Frazier, who had been my best friend, Leon Frazier, who was chief of police in Jefferson Township, came off the Dayton Police Department. He and I have been friends for years. We go back and forth at each other, even on Facebook. Now, both of us do more than just Facebook, because at Faith will also ought to stand up and tell a bunch of folks every Sunday morning or every Saturday when you gather at the mosque, somebody ought to tell them stop being Facebook warriors. If you ain't gonna get up off your behind and do nothing, stay off of Facebook talking about it. Ain't gonna bust a grape. In 2008, it was faith that told me go to Phil Plummer. I didn't want to. Faith said you gotta first put some effort out so you can show folks what won't work. I went to Phil Plummer and I said, Phil, this is what we gonna do. Anybody remember the block parties that the Adam Project started? Well, Steve came to a bunch of them. I know my wife remembers, she did most of the work. We did block parties. We cooked hamburgers. We cooked ribs. We gave away monthly bus passes. I used to think folk were gonna jump me over a bus pass. They rather had a monthly bus pass than the cash that was in the other pocket we used to give away. It didn't improve police-community relations. The bottom line is, I don't care about sharing a hamburger with the police. He may treat me better, but that don't mean he gonna treat you better. And nor when the dark of night come and he pull me over, it don't mean if he don't recognize me, I ain't gonna get treated no better no how. It didn't work. Because here's what we do, and faith has to take a stand. When we have police-community relations, we call a community meeting, and we set the chief, the sheriff, whoever their reps might be, Major Wilson, I don't know who it is, and we sit them in front of the room, and we have them tell us how they ought to treat us. We have them tell us what we ought to do. This is our community. We have to let them know what we will take, what we will not take, and the message has to come from the pulpit. The church has let us down. Yes, I march. Yes, I lay in the middle of the street. Yes, I've gone to Chicago City Hall and shut City Hall down with some folks. During the Christmas season, we went on the busiest shopping area, the something mile they call it, the Mag Mag. They was upset when we closed down their shopping season in Chicago, but we made a statement. So finally, all across the nation, faith leaders are finally starting to stand up. But here's what we're learning. We don't always have to be in charge. Black Lives Matter is doing a tremendous job. The movement for Black Lives, God, do I respect them. I've learned how to show up on the scene now and ask the question, what would you have me to do? Not go do this, go do that. That's how I get along with young folk. As an SCLC man, I was president of the SCLC from 1980 to 1983. Then I went back for a second stint in 2004. How it broke my heart to have the national president of the SCLC just this week come out of his convention and say our organization is looking for a way to work with Black Lives Matter. And so we have hired a retired military general. The whole argument is that we have the proliferation of military hardware, military war gear that we're giving to police departments. And finally, I'm going to say this, if the church doesn't band together next week in Dayton, they don't know I know. The pastors have called for a meeting with the sheriff, the chief from Trotwood. They done called a big breakfast so they can break bread and eat eggs. But they're not dealing with the issues that they have congregated. Nobody killed by the police in these terrible cases should ever have to worry about how the funeral is going to get paid for.
That's right.
Much money as we collect in the black church.
That's right.
No one should be turned away. Do you know we got black preachers telling folk you can't do your funeral in here for your son because he wasn't a member of my church? What kind of madness is that? We must bring faith to the fight. Black people are a people who have always believed in faith. You may not, and that's all right by me. I've worked with one organization that was straight up atheist. They made me the faith coordinator, ain't that right? They made national organization. They made me the faith coordinator and they don't even believe in God, and that's all right by me. I did the work because it was important to bring faith to the fight. November the 18th, 19th, and 20th, that mother's tour of those broken-hearted mothers will be coming to Dayton. They will be coming to Dayton. I blame Anthony for that. I got Anthony involved, and he done talked to mothers in the rebellion against me. I wasn't bringing them to Dayton, bro. I wasn't bringing them here. I said, oh no, let's keep going to these other places. Anthony talked them into coming to Dayton. You will hear their stories. You will feel their pain. You need to hear how some of them were honor roll students. They didn't all have a record. That's why they mad at Philando Castile. Because the first thing they like to do is go get his record out. Well, I did some time, y'all. I don't know if y'all knew that or not. I don't hide it or talk about it. I die tomorrow. They won't tell you how many awards I've gotten. They won't tell you what organizations I rep with. They won't tell you that I sat and broke bread with Michael Eric Dyson and hung out with Cornell. That's shoot. They will tell you, yeah, back in 30 years ago, he did prison time, you'll remember. And we won't say a word. We don't control the information. We don't control the imagery, and we don't light fires under our churches, our mosques, and synagogue, because some of us in this room, don't say nothing, sit in churches every week that don't speak truth to power. We must bring faith if we're going to win this fight. Black Lives Matter. I'm proud of these young folks. I love Alicia Garza. That's, woo. It matters. And we need to get on board and ensure that these preachers hear our voices. They ought to be, when you look at Dr. King, and I'm going to quit Anthony, look at old footage of Martin King. Most of the marches, not all of them, but many of the marches that he led in the South from Brown Chapel. I've marched from Brown Chapel. 2004, Bishop Cox and I were the honorary chairs for the 50th year anniversary of that march. They came out and marched in suit and tie because they were just leaving church. They had church and everybody, all the preachers knew. We dismissing Doc at 1:15 because the march starts at 1:30. When the faith community is absent, you can get away with murdering John Crawford III. When the faith community is absent, you don't have the kind of action over the death of Kylan English that should have taken place. I'm not afraid of the system, but I ain't scared of no preacher either. I can tell you something, I have been the subject of a lot of preachers' meetings in this town. I don't get invited to the breakfasts even when I'm around. And that's all right by me, because my faith tells me that my cause is right. And I'm going to keep fighting till the day I die. Not because I hate any man, but I hate a system that will allow the death of any man, and you have to drop charges, as in the case in Freddie Gray, because they wasn't going to get a conviction no how. If there are charges at all. In a split nanosecond, John Crawford III was shot and killed by a Beaver Creek police officer. And folks in Dayton, not everybody, but folk in Dayton got none. Same thing's happening in Chicago, Baltimore, and I'm not ashamed to say it, and Ferguson. Should have been happening right here in this city because we think we're above the law. Chief Bill stopped talking to me for 2 years over the Kylan English case because he told me I needed to apologize because I kept saying he was murdered. I said, Chief, listen, you'll be a long time getting that apology because I interviewed the funeral director who made this statement, the embalmer who made this statement. He said, Doc, if that young man went over a bridge on his own volition to the rocks below, his body didn't show signs of it. He said, I told my wife I might be all night because they tell me this guy fell to the rocks below and busted his body. He said, imagine how shocked I was when I moved the sheet back. The body of Kylan English was smooth except for a few pricks in his body consistent with taser holes, when the police department continued to deny he had ever been tased. Now, I'm sorry, I ain't like some folk. I love everybody. I think what happened in Dallas was deplorable. I think the killing of Baton Rouge police officers never should have happened. I never will and I never have signed off on violence. But the violence in this community and in communities across the country has been running both ways. And we keep letting them come tell us how they ought to treat us instead of us telling them. The Kylan English case, as I take my seat, young people said this to me. That's who got me involved. I didn't wake up one morning, did I? And say, I think I'll go get involved in the Kylan English case. I got a text. Because folk ask, how'd you get involved? I got a text. And it said, Red, be at the bridge at such and such a time. And when I got there, there were about 25, 30 young folk kneeling around. That's who told me what happened. Then I got another text that gave me an address up the street from the bridge and said, this is where we want you. And I watched a grown man named Bobby English with tears in his eyes look at me, and he grabbed me, and we had never met before. He said, they killed my son. He said, now Rev, I don't want these young folk to tear the city up. And I asked him, who do you trust? And some of them said you, and one of the guys in the crowd had just come home from prison and said, I got his cell phone. I'm connected with the prison community. He said, I'll send him a text. That's how I got involved. But we got to stop being scared. And it ought to be the church community that ought to have these pews filled like Sunday morning right now. The mosque, the temple, the synagogue, whatever you call yourself, the non-believers, the place ought to be filled up. But on Sunday morning, we'll still be talking about Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, instead of talking about it's time to let my people go. God bless y'all. I didn't mean to say all of that. Thank you. Oh, I get a bag too, bro?
Yeah, Denasia told me that you wanted the green bag, so
Denasia knows me, don't she?
you got to make sure you got the green bag.
Green is my color. Thank you, brother.
All right, real quick, I just want to recognize a couple other people who helped me behind the scenes put this event together, and actually we already have 5 other future events set up. This is part 1. We have part 6 already done, so we're working together. First off, my best friend Tyler.
Tyler!
I don't know where Quan just went to. Oh, okay. My best friend Gerard, my brother sitting back there.
Is Gerard here? I saw.
He actually designed the flyer, and he's designed all the rest of the flyers for the upcoming events. Y'all gotta excuse Quan. My best friend Quan, he is actually hearing impaired. He's deaf, but he, no matter what, stands by my side and helps me with whatever I need help with, and he stays there regardless.
He's a good man.
Y'all give it up to my MC, my brother Darnell.
Yeah, good job, good job.
He called me.
He did a good job.
He called me when I posted the flyer and said, what you need me to do? I said, well, I don't know. I said, I've been doing a lot of it, by myself and, whatever. He said, you don't never got to do nothing else by yourself ever again. I got you.
That's what it's about. I
And he
appreciate
stood
that.
here.